Next up, we have Marianne Applin, and she is with the Alaska Maritime National Wildlife Refuge, and she's also going to be getting some assistance from our Arctic Youth Ambassadors.
Well, thank you for having me. I'm another stand-in, but we're eager to share our work. I work for the Alaska Maritime National Wildlife Refuge and Visitor Services, and if any of you have worked with Poppy Benson before, I stepped into her position, but I've worked for the refuge for a long time. I was the Visitor Center Manager in Homer. And so I'm going to be joined by our wonderful youth ambassadors, but one of the most exciting things, I think the most important thing I do is get to work with youth. So I'm going to share some of the programs that we have with the refuge. And just this year, we reached out to 6,000, that's a huge number, 6,000 youth. And that's in environmental education programs and various other ways that we have reached out. So I'm going to talk about some of those programs, and it's kind of an alphabet soup. I'm going to explain what each of these alphabet soup ingredients is about as I go through, and I'll talk to you about some of these different programs. And afterwards, if you know of someone that might be interested, a young person that might be interested in working with us on one of these programs, I'd love to tell you more. Mariana Larson from Sandpoint is a young lady that's worked for us for 3 different years and 3 different programs. She kind of exemplifies some of the things we're trying to do with our youth engagement programs. We'd like to increase science literacy. We'd like to give a chance for youth to participate in conservation careers. That might be marine trades, that might be biology, that might be reaching out to the public and visitor services, so it can be a variety of different roles that are all part of the conservation picture. It offers them a summer job, so that's part of our goal as well. And ultimately, we would like to diversify our workforce in the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service and look more like America. So environmental education is part of what we do, and the Tekla, our ship, which came into Unalaska 2 this year, was a big part of our outreach efforts this year. So we did environmental education programs for kids in Homer and in other communities as well this winter. And in the summertime, we switch gears, and a lot of what we do is reaching out to communities that are offering culture camps. This year, for the first time, we went to Atka. Our timing was not great. It was after the fatal accident there. So our plans changed a little bit, but we were able to take some of the kids that were in the language camp out to Amlia Island, a historic village site. So that was pretty cool. We had hoped to have more participation, but it was just bad timing. Karen Pletnikoff and Aaron Poe were on that cruise, and it was pretty cool to get to go to that site and for some of the youth to get there. On St. Paul Island in the Pribilofs, we have partnered for a long time with different camps there, and the current effort is the Seabird Youth Network, and they do programs in the school year, and also in the summertime, there's a camp that focuses on those millions of seabirds out the back door on the Pribilof Islands. And so they learn about wildlife, they learn about what biologists do, and they get to try out some of the tools of the trade, and they learn about our inventory and monitoring programs that we do on the refuge. We always include a way for them to sort of synthesize what they've learned that is fun and engaging. So art is usually a part of our educational efforts, whether it means creating a piece that they're painting on the water tower or doing a play for the community. So I always try to have some fun wrap-up that's part of that effort. Here at Camp Q, as I said, the Tekla came in and got campers on board, so we were excited to have that happen, and so glad it was able to fit into camp schedule. And our staff did lessons about seabirds and marine mammals, both on the ship and in camp. So thank you for letting us be part of that. And again, if you were around during camp, you may have seen some pretty cool kites flying that had seabirds on them. And we think fun is a pretty important part of the efforts that we do. It's not all just play. Sandpoint Camp this year was a kind of a fusion between a couple of different programs that we offer. So we have a Youth Conservation Corps program that employs high school students aged 15 to 18. And this year, they've done this a couple of years in Sandpoint, and we've also done it in St. Paul. Those youth, among other things that they did as part of their experience, were leaders for lessons that were taught out in Sandpoint. So they focused on intertidal life and other activities to get kids outside. So they are usually leading the younger kids. It's usually terrifying for them the first day. They see all those little faces and have to figure out how they're going to keep them entertained. This year's crew was led by Mariana Larson from Sandpoint, and there were also members from Homer, from ATCA, and from Unalaska. So they spend around 6 weeks together, and it's pretty fun to see them transform into a team as they learn from each other and they get this wide variety of experiences. You see some familiar faces from Unalaska there. And of course, since we're integrating our lessons into a culture camp, cultural exchange is a big part of that experience. And the YCC are able to participate in that as well. And it's a cultural exchange between villages. So a kid from ATCA gets to see how it's done in Sandpoint. So that's a pretty exciting thing, we think, as well, to give those kids a chance to visit other villages. Another part of their experience was to work on board the research vessel Tekla, and they got to learn about ship operation, navigation, and they took turns as deckhands as well. So they worked shifts as deckhands, which can be not as much fun when you're seasick, but it can be hard work. But they also got to do surveys at sea with our biologists. So they got time out in those skiffs wearing those glorious Mustang suits. And again, time for fun, for food, and for friendship and fun. So it's a great combination of different experiences, and we're pretty proud of that program. The Student Conservation Association is another one of those acronyms that I had in my alphabet soup. SCA is a program that partners with a lot of federal agencies, and it provides opportunities for internships. So for instance, some of the young people in the picture here are interns that are working at our headquarters in Homer, and we've had them employed in other ways doing other kinds of jobs through SCA as well. And there are two programs that are particularly aimed kind of nationwide at trying to reach out to kids that may not be thinking about conservation careers or working for natural areas. One of them is called the Career Discovery Intern Program, CDIP, and Mariana, who I mentioned a couple times, was a CDIP last year, but they get a week-long orientation, and kids from all over the country come into this orientation session, and then they disperse and go work at National Wildlife Refuges around the country. And those are usually trying to reach underclassmen, freshmen and juniors, freshmen and sophomores. And there's a kind of a sister program to that that's a little smaller program, the Directorate Fellow Program, and that one targets, again, diverse candidates, and it looks at recent college graduates and grad students and tries to provide a pathway to education, to employment. So if you have, I feel like I just talked a million miles an hour. I hope that was somewhat understandable. But we have a lot of different programs that we work with, and we are excited to try to reach out to youth in the communities that are around refuge lands. And so if you're interested in knowing more about any of those programs, please chat with me. I'll be around through Saturday, maybe longer if the flights don't go. Another program that's sort of related to these is the Arctic Youth Ambassador Program. So if you were here to hear the Youth Ambassador's presentation, you heard a little bit about what they've done. And Janelle, who's going to come up next, I think, is going to share some of her experience, projects that she's working on. She was hired by the USGS this past summer.
I'd also like to give a shout out to Mariana being an Arctic Youth Ambassador as well. So yeah, this summer I got to be with the United States Geological Survey, and on the boat on the bottom right was where I lived for a month at sea without any contact at land and taking part in research.
That's the Professor Moltanowski, and the one above is the Norseman 2, and they're both chartered by science crews each summer. The boat's main motive is finding walrus. The first year they're tagging walrus, and the second year they're collecting biopsies. But my project was with the clams. So we're looking at the benthic bottom and harvesting clams, which are related to the walrus because the walrus depend on those clams to keep their blubber nice and luscious. So the dark spots are where there's more benthic biomatter. And as you can see, in the Chukchi Sea up there is where the first year we got to go up there on the Hannah Shoal and collect clams. And then this year we were further south because we went earlier in the year. So the boat didn't get to go through up where the ice is further south. So let me explain why we would want to mess with clams and what we can learn from clams. Or we call them benthic bivalves, to be more formal. But so traditionally, or as they think, is the sea ice covers the water, and then during breakup, there's suddenly sunlight in the water, and the phytoplankton has this huge spike in population. So things in the water column that eat it will eat their amount, and then a whole bunch will sink to the bottom, which feeds the clams in the benthic habitat. So then in turn feeds the walrus or the other things that eat off the benthic bottom. But with changing climates and whatnot, scientists predict or hypothesize that maybe with the sea ice, there'll be more sunlight in the sea ice, in the water without that sea ice coverage, so the phytoplankton won't have a huge spike in population, and instead that population may level out. So things in the water column, that population will go up and eat it all before it gets to the benthos on the bottom, so that bottom, the northern benthic life, rich benthic life may decrease, and we might see more of like the different types of water column creatures that you see more in southeast. So how are we measuring change in these clams, or how are we looking at if this is actually happening? So as the slide on the left is a clam, and you can see the rings. So in the Arctic, the seasons are pretty, there's the cold season and then there's the warmer season. And you can see each year there's a little bit of growth. So it's annual rings, and you can see the age of the clam. So over the years, some of these clams can be 10 years or 30 years back. You can see how the environment is affecting these clams. So I'm collecting this. I get to do the cool field work and collect these specimens. And then a student down in Texas is working on this project. And my mentor is Vanessa Von Bila, so she's the mastermind. And a student down in Texas is figuring out how to age these rings. And this summer I also got to do, the photo on the right is a black rockfish otolith, so that's the ear bone in fish. So they have the same thing. Every year they'll get a new material ring of what's going on in the environment. So based on the thinness and the thickness of those rings, you can go and increment each of these rings and see trends going on in the environment that may be affecting this species in the water. So the beam trawl is how we collect the clams off the bottom, or this year we tried the new technique of the dredge, and then we'll sort it out in the deck like that. And there's some pretty cool creatures on the bottom. You wouldn't expect that much life to be out there, but there is, and that's a brittle star. So that's just, and ANSEP also is the one that found me from Nome and hooked me up with USGS to have this opportunity. But overall, like, I'm a sophomore, about to be a sophomore in college, and had this really hands-on experience. And it will definitely benefit me as I go on into becoming you guys and networking and working with you. So I think that science involvement with youth is very important as we go forward. And I'm probably busting my time, so Emery's next.
Hello, I'm Cade. I'm from here, and over the summer, I spent my time in Canada and Greenland along with the Students on Ice program, which is a nonprofit program in Canada that brings international students into Canada's Arctic and Greenland. So during my expedition, there was 120 international students, 40 Northerners, me included, and of those 40 Northerners, 39 of them were Inuit. So along this cruise, we gotta go through their land, and we gotta hear their traditional knowledge, and I really enjoyed that. But as we went along our journey, which was 2 weeks, we kind of went along Canada's east coast for maybe about a week. We stopped at multiple areas throughout the coast. We stopped at Rama Bay, we stopped at Hebron National Park, and along all of those stops, we gotta go out on the land and learn about it a little more. We gotta go to different workshops depending on our interests. Me personally, I'm a people person, and I like poli-sci, so I traditionally went out with the Inuit elders, walked on the land, and learned about their stuff. And all of us actually got to go paddleboarding and kayaking with traditional Inuit kayaks through the Arctic because of this. Other students, however, who are more interested in engineering fields or marine fields got to go build their own ROVs with an instructor from the Marine Institute in Canada. So a lot of students got to build their own ROVs, got to test them in the pool, and actually got to test them in the ocean. You know, some of which you could see were actually really well built and actually functioned well, and other students, you know, it didn't go so well. I remember there's this one ROV that was just sitting there doing backflips, and we're all just kind of looking at that like, oh man. So that was something that really intrigued me. We also got to go on skiff rides next to icebergs. I remember sitting in a fjord getting this lecture from a man that studies glaciers, and literally as he said, we're sitting there in a peaceful bliss. He says, this glacier could calve at any moment, and right as he says that, we hear this like as if the glacier is speaking to us, and then literally at that moment, this huge chunk of ice falls into the water, and all of the students got to experience this once-in-a-lifetime opportunity that not everyone, I guess, sees in a lifetime. So that was really, really inspiring to me. I also got to go sit next to an iceberg and hear another lecture. And as that lecture was going on, I got kind of thirsty. So I opened my water bottle, kind of reached my hand over and filled my water bottle with water that was melting off of the iceberg. I mean, how many people get to say they got to do that in their life? Not too many people. So me, as I went along this journey, I learned a lot of things that I'm going to take with me throughout my life. And because of this experience, I think I want to pursue a career in the Arctic. So I don't know how long I've been talking. It seems like I've been kind of ranting on about my experience. But I mean, it just shows how much these programs mean to youth. I mean, literally, there was a program, or there was a workshop for everyone. There's an oceanographer there from an institute. We got to go take samples from ponds whenever we landed on an area. We got to take samples from the ocean, and we got to actually look at them under a microscope. If you're more of an adventurer, you got to go fishing at landings. Some cases, students caught sculpins, and we actually got to dissect them in the lab and look at them, which is really great. I mean, I just cannot stress the importance of these programs. And at the end of the program, a lot of the Inuit students there said they have never been more closer to their culture throughout this program. So I'd like to leave on that note, and thank you.